A family vanished in the mountains 2 weeks ago. We followed their trail and found a cabin hidden in the woods. Inside, they weren't missing. They were waiting for us. The first time I heard about the family that vanished in the Cascades, I didn't care. People disappear in the wilderness all the time. Some take a wrong turn, some fall, some decide not to come back. It wasn't until Harper showed me that headline again, "Family of 4 missing in Cascade Pines, search suspended after 9 days, that I felt something shift. Maybe it was the photo. The little girl clutching a stuffed sloth, smiling too big for the camera. Or maybe it was because Harper said with that calm, logical tone they always used when they were secretly afraid, "They went missing right where we're hiking this weekend." I laughed it off then, told them the woods didn't scare me. But the truth is, the woods have always scared me. We left for the trail early on a Saturday morning, our backpacks crammed with gear we'd barely used before. Harper was the planner, the map reader, the one who believed every mystery had an explanation. I was the opposite, the wanderer, the dreamer, the one who believed in signs and omens. My little bracelet even said it, "All who wander are not lost." It was supposed to make me brave, but as we climbed deeper into the mountains that day, it started to feel more like a warning. The sky was bruised gray, the kind of color that made the trees look endless. The trail twisted through the pines, narrow and slick with last night's rain. We followed the yellow markers nailed to the trunks until somewhere around noon, they simply stopped appearing. I didn't notice at first. I was too busy admiring the sunlight breaking through the canopy, the way it lit the mist like smoke. But Harper did. They stopped walking, map in hand, brows furrowed. "Hold up," they said. "The last marker should have been right here." I glanced around. Nothing. Just trees and silence and the faint drip of water from the leaves. "Maybe they stopped marking this section," I suggested. "They don't just stop." Harper's voice was tight. They looked at their phone. No signal. Shit. I grinned to hide the chill running up my spine. "So what, we turn back?" Harper hesitated. That's how I knew they didn't want to admit we were lost. We kept walking for another 20 minutes, following what looked like a faint trail. It wound upward, growing narrower until it vanished entirely beneath a bed of pine needles. The silence thickened. Even the birds had stopped singing. When we finally stopped, I realized I couldn't hear the sound of wind anymore. It was like the forest had sealed itself around us. Harper sighed, dropping their pack. "We're turning around now," but that's when I saw it, a clearing up ahead. A patch of open ground, smooth and almost circular, with a ring of blackened stones at the center. I jogged forward before Harper could protest. The remains of a campfire. "Hey, someone's been here," I called out. Harper joined me reluctantly, their boots crunching on the damp earth. Scattered around the fire pit were the usual signs of a campsite: crushed soda cans, a torn plastic bag, a few burnt sticks. But then Harper bent down and picked up something bright and pink, a child's backpack. "Someone left this behind," they murmured. The color had faded a little, but it was unmistakable, neon pink with cartoon cats on the front. I knelt beside Harper as they unzipped it. Inside were a crumpled paper lunch bag, a half-empty notebook, and a small stuffed sloth, its fur matted with dirt and ash. I took the plush toy in my hands. It was small, meant for a child to hold while sleeping. The eyes were scratched, one missing entirely. "This has to be from the missing family," I whispered. Harper didn't answer. They were staring into the notebook. When I leaned over, I saw it too. Childlike sketches, all stick figures, labeled in messy handwriting: Mommy, Daddy, Uncle Simon, me. One of them, a tall, messy stick figure with a mop of hair, was labeled Smelly Uncle. On the inside cover, scrawled in shaky letters, was a name. Lila B. Harper closed the notebook, their jaw tight. "Eli," they said quietly. "That's her. That's the kid." For a moment, the world tilted. It was one thing to read about a missing family, but it was another to hold something they'd touched. I looked around the clearing. "So where are they? They couldn't have gone far." "Don't," Harper warned. "We're already off trail." I ignored them and started walking toward the edge of the clearing, where the trees thickened again. Something fluttered in the wind ahead, pink against the green. I climbed up the slope, my heart hammering, and found it tangled in a branch. A child's sweater. When I turned the collar inside out, I saw the name written in marker. Lila B. I called out, "Harper! Over here!" They were already marking trees with blue tape, building a trail in case we got turned around. "Don't go too far," they shouted. "There's a trail up here," I yelled back. They climbed up after me, muttering under their breath. When they saw the sweater, their face went pale. "Eli," they said, low and sharp, "we need to stop. We can't play detective in the woods. She's a kid, Harper. What if she's out there? And what if she's not?" They pointed at the horizon, where the sun had begun to sink. "It's almost evening. We could get lost, too." I hated when Harper was right, but I couldn't let it go. That tiny sweater in my hands felt like a heartbeat. "If we turn back now," I said, "and that little girl dies out here because we didn't try, can you live with that?" Harper sighed, a sound halfway between anger and fear. You're impossible. They tore off another piece of tape and handed me the roll. Mark every tree. If you get lost, I swear to God I'm not dying out here looking for you. I smirked, taking the tape. Promise I'll make it easy for you to find me. They didn't laugh. We split up. Harper went back down the slope to make sure the campsite was clearly marked, while I climbed upward, following the faint path that wound through the trees. The light dimmed quickly as I climbed. The air grew colder, heavier. My breath came out in misty clouds. The woods up here were quieter than before, too quiet. My footsteps sounded too loud, like I was walking in someone else's house. After about 40 minutes, the path leveled off into another clearing. And there, half hidden among the trees, stood a cabin. It was small, crooked, with a roof that sagged in the middle. The wood was gray and weathered, the windows black. A pink thermos sat on the front steps, decorated with anime stickers peeling at the edges. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around. But curiosity is a kind of gravity. It pulls harder the closer you get. I approached the steps slowly, the sloth plush clutched in my hand. The closer I got, the worse the smell became. It wasn't just rot, it was sweet, cloying, like fruit left to decay in the sun. The front door was slightly ajar. Hello? I called, my voice cracking. Is anyone here? No answer. The woods were silent behind me. The door creaked softly in the wind, tapping against the frame like a heartbeat. I wanted Harper there. God, I wanted Harper, but I knew if I went back now, they'd never let me come here again. And something inside that cabin was waiting to be found. I took a breath, reached for the doorknob, and pushed the door open. The smell hit me like a wall. My eyes watered. The light inside was dim, but warm, like candlelight. I expected dust, cobwebs, decay, but what I saw instead made me stop cold. 4 people sat around a wooden table. They weren't moving. The man closest to me, a thin, tired-looking guy with a scruffy beard, raised a trembling finger to his lips. Shh, my stomach dropped. Are you David? I whispered. He didn't answer. His eyes darted toward something behind me. Then I heard it. The door creaked again, this time not from the wind. Footsteps on the porch, heavy, slow. David's hand shot out, grabbing my arm, his nails digging into my skin. His other hand pointed to his eyes. Then he closed them. The woman across from him, her lips sewn shut with thick black thread, squeezed the little girl's hand. The girl, Lila, clutched her sloth, her eyes wide with terror. The last person, a man with long hair sitting motionless at the far end of the table, didn't move at all. David's grip tightened. Close your eyes, he mouthed. The door behind me groaned open, and I did as he said. I shut my eyes. Something stepped into the cabin. The boards creaked beneath its weight. A low chuckle echoed, deep, wet, familiar in a way that made my stomach twist. The air grew thick with the smell of rot. My pulse hammered so loudly I thought it would give me away. The thing walked past me, its breath sour and cold against my neck. It whispered something. I swear it whispered my name, but I kept my eyes shut. My hands shaking, then silence. The door clicked shut. When I opened my eyes, they were all staring at me, and the words carved into the table between us came into focus. Speak, and be silenced. Look, and be blinded. Leave, and be bound. When the last chair is filled, you will be free. The long-haired man's head lolled slightly to the side, revealing where his eyes should have been, 2 dark, empty sockets. His mouth was sewn shut too, and the seat to my left, the only empty chair, waited. I didn't sit. Every part of my body screamed to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. The air in that cabin felt wrong, as if the room itself was breathing around us. The smell of rot had deepened, clinging to the back of my throat, sweet and vile. The firelight, or maybe it was lamplight, flickered across the faces at the table, throwing them into strange relief. The woman with the stitched mouth kept trembling, a muffled sound leaking from her nose like a sob. The little girl's eyes darted between me and the door, her fingers gripping her mother's hand. The man who had shushed me, David, was still staring at me, his hand locked around my wrist with desperate strength. Don't move, he mouthed. I couldn't have even if I wanted to. My pulse was too loud, my lungs too small. The long-haired man with no eyes didn't move, his head tilted slightly as if listening to something none of us could hear. Then David released me just long enough to point again, sharply at my chair. At first I thought he was telling me to sit. Then I saw what he meant. He was pointing to the table itself, to the words carved into the wood. Speak and be silenced. His gaze burned the warning into me. I nodded. He gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of his head, and then closed his eyes again. The room fell still. For a moment nothing happened, and I almost believed the footsteps I'd heard were just my imagination. Then faintly I heard them again outside. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The door rattled. The little girl made a tiny sound, like a whimper. Her mother's stitched mouth opened and closed uselessly, the threads stretching tight. I couldn't look away. I could see faint traces of blood along the seams, as if she had tried to tear them out once. The door handle turned. I froze. It didn't open. Not all the way. Just enough for a draft of air to sneak in, cold as the grave. I waited for the thing outside to step through, but nothing came. The silence stretched so long I thought I'd gone deaf. Then the chuckle started again, soft at first, a rasping laugh, almost human but not quite. It scraped down my spine like nails on glass. I pressed my lips together to keep from screaming. The laughter moved around the cabin, circling it slowly, the sound traveling through the thin wooden walls. Then it stopped at the window behind me. I could hear the breath fogging the glass. A long, wet inhale, followed by a sigh. Eli. The voice was clearer now, familiar. I knew that voice. I just couldn't place it. My body jerked as if recognizing a childhood tune twisted into something diseased. I turned toward the sound before I could stop myself. David's hand shot out again, slamming down on mine. The sound made the woman flinch, and David's eyes went wide in panic. I realized too late that the laugh had stopped. The air outside stilled. For a heartbeat, the whole world seemed to hold its breath. Then the door slammed open. The force of it rattled the table. I screamed without meaning to, the sound bursting out of me before I could think. The moment the word left my mouth, a sharp, burning pain seared across my lips. I clamped my hands over my mouth, choking on the shock. My fingers came away wet and dark. Blood. The skin had split as though invisible blades had slashed me. David yanked me down, shoving my head against the table, his mouth close to my ear. Quiet, he hissed. Don't speak! I couldn't have anyway. My throat locked. The door hung open, creaking softly, but I didn't hear footsteps this time. Instead, the light in the room seemed to dim, as if something massive was standing just outside, blocking out the world. A smell of wet earth rolled in, soil, rot, and something metallic underneath. The hair on my neck lifted. The shadow moved. I saw its outline spill across the floor, stretching impossibly long. Then I saw the shape of a hand. No, not a hand, a claw, slide over the threshold. The fingers were wrong, too thin, too long, bending backward. It rested there for a moment, as if testing the air, then withdrew. The door swung shut again, slowly, almost politely. I sat trembling, tears streaming down my face, too terrified to move. My lips stung with every breath. David slowly let go of me and motioned for me to keep my eyes closed. I obeyed. The silence returned. A minute passed. Then another. Finally, he touched my shoulder. It's gone, he mouthed. I looked at him, still shaking. What is it? I mouthed back. He shook his head, eyes full of grief. Then, using one blood-smeared finger, he traced a message onto the table. Don't know. It comes when we try to leave. I pointed at the carvings. The rules? I mouthed. He nodded once. My gaze drifted toward the little girl, Lila. She was watching me, eyes huge and glassy, her small chest heaving with every breath. She mouthed something, tiny lips forming the words, "It doesn't like new people." I swallowed hard. My head was spinning. This couldn't be real, but my lips still burned where I'd spoken. The blood was still fresh on my fingers. I needed answers. Keeping my movements small, I lifted my hand and began to trace letters on the table, slow and deliberate so they could all see. How long have you been here? David watched me, then turned his palm over and traced back. We lost track of time. He pointed at the lamp in the corner. Never goes out, he mouthed. No days, that made no sense. The lamp flickered like candlelight, but when I looked closer I realized it wasn't a flame. It was something else, something pulsing faintly like a heartbeat, encased in glass. I shivered. The woman's gaze caught mine. Her lips twitched against the black thread. Blood welled along the stitches as she mouthed painfully, "Run." Before I could respond, the little girl whimpered. Her eyes were fixed on something behind me. David's head snapped up. His expression changed instantly, from exhaustion to terror. He mouthed a single word, "Down." I dropped to the floor instinctively. The sound came next, heavy breathing, right outside the door. A scraping noise, like nails dragging along the wood. Then the voice again, closer this time. "You broke the rule." I didn't realize I was crying until I felt tears hit my hands. The voice was wrong in every way. It was both male and female, young and old, echoing in layers like it came from inside my skull. The others kept their eyes shut tight, bodies stiff, hands nailed to the table. David was trembling now, his teeth gritted against silent sobs. The breathing grew louder. Then the doorknob turned. I shut my eyes just in time. The door burst open, slamming against the wall. The wind rushed in, icy cold. I heard it step inside, slow, deliberate, each movement accompanied by that wet chuckle. Its presence filled the room, pressing on my chest until I could barely breathe. The smell was unbearable now, mold, rot, and something chemical like burnt hair. It stopped right behind me. I felt it lean down, close enough for its breath to crawl across my neck. "You took her place," it whispered. "Now the circle is complete." My heart stopped. Then a hand touched my shoulder, rough, sharp-tipped fingers pressing into the skin. Pain flared down my arm, but I didn't dare move. The thing's head, or what I thought was its head, hovered beside mine. I could hear it sniffing me. "Not ready yet," it said softly. "You still remember your name," and then, as suddenly as it came, it moved away. Its footsteps circled the table once. I heard the faint sound of something being dragged, metal scraping wood. Then a low groan of pain. David's voice, muffled but unmistakable. A hammering sound followed. 1, 2, 3 sharp strikes. I bit my tongue to stop the scream rising in my throat. When the hammering stopped, I knew what it had done. When the door closed again and the footsteps faded into the trees, the silence that followed was worse than the noise. I opened my eyes. David's hands were nailed to the table. The nails were thick and black, slick with blood. He was breathing in ragged gasps, his face white as bone. I scrambled to my knees beside him. "Oh, God," I whispered, then slapped a hand over my mouth too late. The cut on my lip reopened, blood running down my chin. I didn't care. "David!" He shook his head violently, eyes full of pain and pleading. Then he mouthed one word. "Stay." My mind screamed at me to run, but my body wouldn't move. I stared at the nails, at the blood pooling beneath his wrists. He was still conscious, still breathing. His wife stared straight ahead, tears streaking her cheeks. The little girl's small shoulders trembled as she pressed her face into her sloth, muffling her sobs. I couldn't take it anymore. I leaned closer to David, whispering, "I can get help. I can bring someone." He shook his head again, more violently. He mouthed, "It won't let you leave." "Yes, it will," I whispered fiercely. "You distracted it before I can go." But then I stopped. Because even as I said it, the words carved into the table burned brighter, faint lines glowing beneath the grime. "Leave and be bound," I understood then. They had all tried. The empty chair wasn't for a new arrival. It was a replacement, a trade. Every time someone tried to escape, the cabin demanded another to take their place. The realization sank into me like a stone. I looked at Lila. Her small face was streaked with tears, her lips moving soundlessly. She wasn't just scared, she was pleading. Her eyes said what her mouth couldn't. "Please help us." David's breathing was growing weaker. He managed to lift his head just enough to meet my gaze. His lips shaped one last message. "Run while it's gone." I hesitated. Then I heard it again. Far away this time, deeper in the forest, the laughter, echoing faintly between the trees. I didn't think. I bolted. The moment I crossed the threshold of the cabin, the air changed. It felt thicker, heavier, the sound of the woods rushing back all at once. I ran down the slope, branches whipping my face, the sloth plush still clutched in my hand. The forest blurred past me, every tree the same. I followed the blue tape Harper had tied, flashing faintly in the dying light. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but I didn't stop until the laughter faded behind me. When I finally collapsed against a tree, gasping, I dared to look back. The cabin was gone, no clearing. No roof, no smoke, just trees. And somewhere, faint but unmistakable, the echo of a hammer striking wood. I ran until my lungs burned, until the world spun and my vision blurred, until the only sound left was the ragged rhythm of my own heartbeat. I didn't know how long I'd been running. Minutes? Hours? The forest looked the same in every direction, endless pines rising like dark spears into a sky that had turned the color of iron. My throat ached from breathing cold air. My legs trembled beneath me, but the thought of stopping made my stomach twist. Every time I slowed down, I could almost hear it again. That low chuckle echoing between the trees. A sound that didn't belong anywhere in the living world. The air was colder here too, sharp and thin like the top of a mountain, but the ground sloped downward, so that didn't make sense. Nothing made sense anymore. The cabin, the family, the rules carved into that table, it all clung to me like smoke I couldn't wash off. Eventually, I tripped over a root and hit the ground hard. The breath was knocked clean out of me. I lay there in the pine needles, staring up through the branches. The sky above was deep purple now, a single star flickering faintly through the mist. My hands shook so violently that I had to hold them against my chest to keep them still. The sloth plush was still clutched in one hand, its matted fur now streaked with dirt and blood. I didn't remember grabbing it, but I couldn't let it go. It felt like a lifeline, something real to hold on to. I stayed like that for a long time, just breathing, trying to convince myself that I'd made it out, that I was safe. But the woods were too quiet. No birds, no insects, not even the sound of wind in the branches. It was like the forest itself was waiting for something. Then, somewhere far behind me, the faintest sound. Thud, thud, thud. Slow, deliberate, uneven. Footsteps. I pushed myself up, every muscle screaming in protest. The path, if it was still a path, was barely visible in the fading light. I turned toward what I hoped was downhill and started walking again, slower this time, forcing myself to stay quiet. Every few steps I'd glance back, and every time I did, I could have sworn the trees had shifted somehow, like they were closing in. That's when I saw it. A flash of blue tape fluttering on a branch up ahead. My heart leapt. Harper's markers. I stumbled toward it, hope flaring for the first time in what felt like days. If I could find enough of them, I could make my way back to the campsite, and then maybe, just maybe, to the trail, to Harper, to safety. The second strip of tape came a few minutes later, then a third. I followed them like breadcrumbs, my body running on autopilot until I spotted a faint orange glow between the trees. My breath caught. Firelight! Harper! I called out before I could stop myself. My voice cracked, rough and raw. Harper, it's me! No answer. The light flickered again, brighter this time. I broke into a run, pushing through the undergrowth until the trees parted. There, in a small clearing, was a campfire, and beside it, a tall, familiar figure hunched over a map. Harper! I choked out, stumbling toward them. They turned sharply, flashlight in hand. For a split second, they looked like a ghost. Pale face, wide eyes, clothes streaked with dirt. Then recognition softened their expression. Jesus, Eli! They crossed the clearing in 2 strides and gripped my shoulders. Where the hell have you been? You're freezing. The relief hit so hard it almost hurt. I wanted to collapse, to cry, to tell them everything, but the words stuck in my throat. The family, I managed finally. I found them. Harper, I found them. Their face went still. What? There's a cabin, I said, my voice trembling. Up the slope. They're inside, all of them. But something's wrong. I expected them to argue, to demand proof, but they just stared at me. Their brow furrowing in that way they always did when they were trying to solve a problem too big for logic. Eli, they said slowly, there's no cabin up there. I checked every map. That area's nothing but forest. I'm telling you, it's real. I saw it. They were there. The little girl, Lila, she's alive. They didn't believe me. I saw it in their eyes. The doubt, the worry. They looked at me like I was fragile glass about to break. You're in shock, they said softly. You've been lost for hours. You probably imagined— I didn't imagine it, I shouted, and the sound echoed off the trees, too loud, too final. Harper flinched. I lowered my voice. Please, just come see. I can show you. They hesitated, glancing into the woods where the darkness pooled thick and heavy. It's almost night, they said. We'll never find it in the dark. Then we wait till morning, I said quickly. But we have to go back. Harper rubbed their face, muttering a curse. You're unbelievable. But they didn't say no. We sat by the fire, both too shaken to eat. Harper told me how they'd followed my trail for hours, how they almost turned back when they couldn't find me. Your markers stopped halfway up the slope, they said. After that, nothing. I thought maybe you fell. I almost did, I admitted. But the trail kept going. It led straight to the cabin. Eli, Harper said carefully, if there was a cabin, the search teams would have found it. They've been combing this area for days. I didn't answer. I couldn't explain it. How the air felt different up there. How the light didn't seem to move the same way. How I wasn't even sure time had passed normally inside that place. I just stared into the fire until the flames blurred. Somewhere in the woods, a branch snapped. Harper tensed, flashlight in hand. Probably an animal, they said, though their voice was tight. We listened. Nothing. Just the hiss of the fire. Then another crack. Closer this time. Harper stood up, sweeping the beam through the trees. Hello? The light caught something between the trunks, a flicker of pale fabric. For an instant, I thought it was just mist, but then it moved. A figure, small and hunched, standing just beyond the circle of light. Is someone there? Harper called. The figure didn't answer. I stood, my chest tightening. Lila. The name left my lips like a whisper, but the figure flinched. Then it stepped forward into the light. It was a child, her hair tangled, face streaked with dirt. Her eyes were wide and glassy. She looked exactly like the photo from the news, the one with the stuffed sloth in her arms. Only now the sloth hung from her fingers, head dangling. Harper froze beside me. Eli, they murmured. How? But I was already moving toward her. Lila, it's okay. We can help you. She blinked slowly, her expression unreadable. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Then she lifted her arm and pointed into the woods. Eli, don't, Harper said sharply. She wants us to follow. I whispered. No, she doesn't. Look at her. I did. And that's when I saw it, the way her head tilted slightly to one side, too far, like her neck didn't bend right. The skin around her mouth was cracked and dry, the color wrong, grayish blue. She looked like something that had been left in the cold too long. Jesus Christ, Harper breathed. Lila's hand dropped to her side. She turned and walked into the darkness. I hesitated only a moment before stepping after her. Harper grabbed my arm. Eli, stop! She's real, I said. She needs help. She's dead. The words hit like a slap. Harper's eyes were wide with fear, not disbelief. You don't understand what you saw up there. We need to get out of these woods right now. But I couldn't. I looked back toward where Lila had disappeared. The trees had swallowed her completely, but I could still hear the faint sound of her footsteps. And underneath that, something else, a dragging sound, soft and wet. Following behind her. Eli, Harper said again, voice breaking. Please. I turned back to them, and the look on their face made me hesitate. They weren't just scared. They were looking past me. Don't move, Harper whispered. I didn't. They raised the flashlight slightly, and the beam landed on the ground a few feet behind me. A trail of footprints led straight to where I stood, but there were two sets. One was mine. The other was smaller, the steps uneven, like someone limping. But there were no prints leading away, just toward me. The air went cold again, the kind of cold that settles inside your bones. The fire sputtered, the flames bending toward the ground as if something was sucking the air away. I heard it then, soft, rhythmic knocking. 3 beats, thump, 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 not from the trees. From the ground beneath our feet, Harper cursed under their breath, grabbing my arm. We're leaving. Now! We ran, leaving the fire to die behind us. I didn't look back this time. The forest seemed alive around us, whispering, breathing. Every shadow looked like a person. Every tree seemed to lean closer. The knocking followed us, echoing faintly in the distance, always the same rhythm, steady as a pulse. When we finally stopped, I realized we were back at the clearing, the campsite. The ashes of the old fire pit glowed faintly under the moonlight. Harper bent over, hands on their knees, gasping. We can wait here till morning, they said. Then we find the trail. We leave. No more heroics, I wanted to agree, but something in me had changed. I couldn't shake the feeling that the forest hadn't let us go, that it never would. And when I looked down, I realized the sloth plush was gone. I didn't notice the cold until it started to hurt. The kind that gnaws at your bones, seeps into your fingers, and turns your breath into frost. The fire was long dead, and Harper was asleep beside me, their head tilted awkwardly against their backpack, the dim light of dawn just beginning to bleed through the trees. I sat there in silence, knees to my chest, staring at the ashes. I should have been relieved to see morning. I should have felt safe. But the woods didn't look any different in daylight. The air was still heavy, unmoving. The forest still too quiet, too still, as if everything inside it had gone somewhere else and left only the trees behind. I kept thinking about the footprints, the knocking, the little girl who vanished into the dark. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the way her head tilted too far, the dry, cracked lips that never made a sound. And beneath it all, that voice whispering in the dark, "You took her place." I rubbed my hands together for warmth and tried to convince myself it wasn't real. That I'd hallucinated everything, sleep deprivation, fear. Maybe the sloth plush had fallen somewhere on the run back, but deep down I knew better. The woods wanted something from me. That thought came unbidden, as if whispered straight into my head. Something wanted me to come back. A rustle beside me made me jump. Harper stirred, groaning softly, squinting against the light. You didn't sleep? I shook my head. They yawned, running a hand through their hair. You look like hell. So do you. They gave a humorless chuckle. Fair, let's pack up. The sooner we get out of here, the better. We doused what was left of the fire and shouldered our packs. Harper pulled out the map, checking it against their compass. Trail should be south of here. If we keep the sun to our left, we'll hit it in a few hours. I nodded, but my gaze drifted upward, following the slope behind us. Through the pines, I could almost make out a faint break in the trees, a darker line that might have been a path, the same direction I'd come from the day before. The cabin's direction. Eli, Harper said sharply, catching my look. Don't even think about it. I wasn't. Yes, you were. Their tone softened, but their eyes didn't. Whatever you think you saw up there, it's done. We're done. I'm not losing you to some ghost story. They started walking, and I followed, but each step felt heavier than the last, my body moving forward while my thoughts stayed behind. The air grew warmer as the sun rose higher, but it didn't help. The forest seemed to press closer around us, the trees whispering overhead. I tried to shake the feeling of being watched, but it wouldn't go away. We walked in silence for almost 2 hours. No trail markers, no familiar landmarks. Harper checked the map again, frowning. This doesn't make sense. We should have hit the stream by now. Maybe we went too far east, I said. We've been heading south. They turned slowly, scanning the woods. The sun hasn't moved. I stopped. What do you mean? Look at it. They pointed upward. It's been in the same damn spot for an hour. I looked. They were right. The sun hung just above the tree line, pale and distant, frozen in the same patch of sky. My stomach twisted. That's not possible. Harper didn't answer. They just folded the map slowly and shoved it back into their pack. We're turning around. Back where? Back to the campsite. We'll retrace our steps. I almost told them that I didn't think we could, that whatever this was didn't follow rules like north or south anymore. But before I could speak, I saw something behind them, a strip of pink fabric fluttering in the wind. My breath caught. Harper. They turned. The fabric was tangled on a low branch a few feet away, a child's sweater. My chest tightened as I stepped closer. The tag inside was faintly visible, letters written in permanent marker, Lila B. No, Harper whispered. No, no, no. That's the same one you found yesterday. It can't be, I said, even though I knew it was. The same tear along the collar. The same faint blood stain near the sleeve. Harper snatched it from me and threw it to the ground like it burned. "We're leaving, now." They started walking faster, their breath quick and shallow. I followed, clutching the strap of my backpack like it was a lifeline. The forest began to darken again, though the sun hadn't moved. The shadows stretched longer, deeper, like ink bleeding through the world. The trees looked older now, gnarled, twisted, their bark split open like cracked skin. And then I saw it. Up ahead, through the trees, the faint outline of a structure. My legs went weak. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no," Harper froze. "What?" I didn't answer. I just pointed. The cabin was there, exactly the same as before. The roof sagged, the wood dark with age, the door hanging slightly open. A thin column of smoke rose from the chimney. Harper's voice was hoarse. "We walked in the opposite direction. I told you," I said quietly. "It doesn't matter which way you go." For a long moment, neither of us moved. The forest was silent except for the faint creaking of the cabin's door swaying in the wind. Then Harper swore under their breath and stepped forward. "Wait, what are you doing?" I hissed. "I'm proving it's not real." They marched ahead, anger replacing fear. "It's a trick, a mirage. Something you dreamed up. I'll open the door, and there'll be nothing inside." "Harper, stop!" I lunged after them, grabbing their arm, but they shook me off and reached for the handle. The door swung open with a groan. For a heartbeat, there was nothing, just darkness inside. Then a wave of air rushed out, cold and thick with the smell of decay. Harper stumbled back, gagging. I clamped a hand over my mouth as my stomach lurched. The stench was worse than before. "Harper," I whispered, "close it, please." But they didn't. They were staring past me, eyes wide. "What?" I turned and froze. The table. It was there again, in the center of the cabin, lit by a soft orange glow from the lamp that shouldn't exist. And sitting around it were 3 figures. The same ones, the same awful stillness. David, his hands nailed to the table. Mara, her lips stitched shut. Little Lila, her small hand resting in her mother's. But there was something new this time. The empty chair wasn't empty anymore. Harper stood at the doorway, rooted in place, eyes wide with horror. "Eli," they whispered, "what the hell is this?" Before I could speak, Lila turned her head toward us. Her eyes opened wide, milky and unfocused. Then, in a voice so faint I barely heard it, she said, "You came back." Harper stumbled backward, tripping over the threshold. "She spoke, The lamp flickered. The air inside the cabin shimmered like heat rising from asphalt. And then, from somewhere unseen, came that laughter again. Louder this time. Closer. Harper slammed the door shut, but it didn't help. The sound was inside with us, inside me. It filled my skull, rattled my bones. The walls shuddered, dust raining down from the ceiling. "Run!" I gasped. We turned and bolted, crashing through the trees. Branches tore at our faces, the forest spinning around us. I could hear footsteps behind us, but they weren't ours. They were too heavy, too slow. "Thud, thud, thud, don't look back," Harper shouted. I didn't. I couldn't. My body was moving on instinct now, every nerve on fire. But then, ahead of us through the trees, I saw movement, figures, dozens of them. Pale shapes standing among the trunks, motionless, watching. Harper skidded to a stop beside me. "What? They weren't people." "Not anymore. Their faces were wrong, their bodies too thin, their skin stretched tight like parchment, and every single one of them had their eyes sewn shut." I grabbed Harper's hand. "Keep moving." We veered off the path, or what we thought was a path, and plunged downhill. The air grew thicker with every step, the light dimmer. My lungs screamed, my vision blurring. The laughter followed us, weaving through the trees, echoing from every direction at once. Then, suddenly, the ground disappeared. We fell, tumbling down a steep embankment, hitting roots, rocks, dirt. I landed hard on my side, pain exploding in my shoulder. Harper hit the ground beside me with a grunt. For a moment, everything was silent except for the ringing in my ears. Then, slowly, I lifted my head. The cabin was below us. I don't know how, but it was there again, its roof gleaming faintly in the half-light. The door creaked open as if waiting. Harper cursed, clutching their arm. "It's pulling us back." I stared at the door. Something moved inside. Shadows shifting, shapes forming, and then, faintly, I saw it. The sloth plush lying on the steps, its head tilted toward me like it had been waiting all along. My throat tightened. "It wants us to go in." Harper turned to me, their face pale. "Then we don't. We burn it." Before I could answer, the forest went quiet again. Completely silent. Not even the wind. The air thickened, heavy as water. Harper reached for their lighter, flicking it once, twice. No flame. Then the door slammed open, and a voice spoke from the darkness. "You can't burn what you never left." The ground shuddered. The trees groaned. The earth itself seemed to twist. And the last thing I saw before everything went black was the cabin's door, swinging wider, the glow inside spreading across the clearing like firelight. Except it wasn't fire. It was eyes. When I opened my eyes, the world was wrong. The sky was the color of old ash, the trees black silhouettes without roots, hanging in a void that looked like night and dawn combined. The air buzzed faintly, like electricity before a storm. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't respond. My limbs felt heavy, anchored. I was sitting. The surface beneath my palms was wood, smooth, cold, familiar. Slowly, with effort, I forced my head down. My hands were resting on a table. The same table, the same words carved into its surface. Speak and be silenced. Look and be blinded. Leave and be bound. My breath caught as I saw the last line glowing faintly beneath my trembling fingers. When the last chair is filled, you will be free. To my left, Harper sat motionless, head bowed, their eyes closed, their hands nailed to the table. Blood had dried in dark trails down their wrists. Their lips moved faintly, whispering something I couldn't hear. Across from us sat David, his expression empty now, his skin pale as paper. Mara was beside him, her mouth still bound shut, the stitches blackened and old. And between them, little Lila, her small hand resting on the sloth plush I thought I'd lost. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My throat burned, my voice strangled somewhere deep inside. I wanted to rip my hands free, but they wouldn't move. The nails were already there, sunk through my wrists, holding me fast. The pain was distant, almost numb, like it had been there forever. Then, from somewhere in the cabin, the laughter began again. It wasn't outside this time. It came from behind me, soft at first, rising slowly until it filled the air like static. I turned my head just enough to see it. The thing that had been following me through the woods, the voice that whispered my name, it wasn't a monster. Not really. It was me, or what had once been me. The figure standing by the door was identical to me. Same face, same clothes, same blood drying on the lips. But the eyes were hollow, the sockets empty and dark, and the mouth was stretched in a grin that was too wide, too human to be human. It stepped closer, its movements smooth, its laughter fading into a whisper. "You came back," it said in my voice. "They always come back." I shook my head weakly. "Why?" I croaked, the sound tearing out of me like broken glass. The thing leaned in close, its grin twisting wider. "Because you left the door open." And then it pointed to the words carved into the table. The letters burned brighter, the glow spreading like veins of fire through the wood. "When the last chair is filled, you will be free." "I don't understand," I whispered. The creature tilted its head, mock pity in its tone. "It's a circle, Eli. It always was. One leaves, another takes their place. One runs, another returns. You left a space when you fled. Now the circle is whole again." My heart pounded, the truth sinking in like a knife. That was what it wanted. Not escape. Completion. The cabin didn't keep people. It replaced them. Each new soul took the place of the last, trapped until the next wanderer stumbled too far from the trail. Lila looked up at me then. Her eyes weren't white anymore. They were clear, deep brown, the color of life. She smiled faintly, and I realized she was breathing, really breathing for the first time. David turned his head toward her, tears spilling down his face. Mara's stitched mouth trembled as a sound escaped her, soft and broken, like a sob. Harper's head lifted slightly, their lips parting in disbelief. The light in the room changed. It grew brighter, softer, filling the cabin with warmth that didn't belong here. The air smelled like pine and summer rain. For one impossible moment, the decay was gone, the rot replaced by something pure. The door opened, and beyond it wasn't the forest. It was sunlight. Lila stood, her hands coming free without tearing. She looked at me, then at her parents, and smiled. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice small but clear. She took David's hand, then Mara's, and together they stepped through the door into the light. Harper turned to me, eyes wide. "Eli, what's happening?" I wanted to answer, but I already knew. I could feel it in my chest, the nails tightening, the chair growing colder beneath me. "They're free," I whispered. "We're not." The light vanished as the door closed, sealing the cabin in darkness again. Harper was shaking now, tugging uselessly against the nails. "No, no, no, we can't. There has to be a way." The laughter came again, softer this time, almost tender. My double stepped closer until its shadow fell across the table. "There's always a way," it said. "You just have to wait for someone to take your place." It leaned down, placing a hand against my cheek. Its skin was cold and smooth, like polished stone. "Until then," it whispered, "don't look, don't speak, don't leave." And then it smiled, my smile, and walked to the far wall. As it did, the outline of a doorway began to appear behind it, faint and glowing, just like the one I'd seen when I first entered. The creature stepped through it and vanished, leaving only the faint echo of my own voice laughing somewhere far away. The cabin was silent again. The nails no longer hurt. The air was still. Harper's breathing slowed beside me, their head lowering onto their chest. I wanted to reach out, to tell them I was sorry, to tell them not to blame themselves, but my lips wouldn't move. The world felt distant now, fading at the edges like an old photograph. Somewhere outside, I thought I heard footsteps. Two voices. Young, curious. Maybe hikers, maybe another pair of siblings. I wanted to scream, to warn them, to tell them to turn back, but I couldn't. The last thing I saw was the sloth plush on the table, its glass eyes catching the faint light from the window, and the words carved beneath it beginning to fade one by one, until only the last line remained. When the last chair is filled, you will be free. And then the door creaked open,